Staff Sergeant Jake Martinez walked through the long metal hallways of Galactic Council Station Omega 7. His boots made soft sounds on the smooth floor. The station was huge, bigger than any city Jake had ever seen on Earth. Lights from different colored suns came through the large windows. Ships from dozens of worlds moved past like metal fish in space. Jake was tired. He had just finished a 3-day mission protecting Ambassador Helen Carter during trade talks with the Centaurian Empire. The talks had gone well, but Jake hadn't slept much in 72 hours. His dark green uniform was clean and pressed. The medals on his chest caught the light as he walked. Each one told a story of battles fought and lives saved. He stopped in front of a door marked Officers' Lounge, authorized personnel only. Jake had been here before. The lounge was where military officers from all species could eat, drink, and rest between missions. Jake had his military card ready. He was hungry and wanted nothing more than a hot meal and a cold drink. The door opened with a soft hiss. Inside, Jake could see comfortable chairs and tables. Officers from many different worlds sat together. Some looked like giant birds with bright feathers. Others had blue skin and long arms. A few looked almost human, but with silver eyes that glowed. The smell of food from a dozen planets filled the air. Behind a curved desk stood a Zephyrian female. Her skin looked like it was made of clear crystal. Light moved through her body in slow waves. Her people were known across the galaxy for being proud and thinking they were better than everyone else. She looked up as Jake approached, and her glowing eyes became cold. "Yes?" she said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Jake pulled out his military identification card. "Staff Sergeant Jake Martinez, Terran Defense Force. I'd like a table for one, please." The Zephyrian looked at the card but didn't take it. She looked Jake up and down, seeing his uniform, his medals, his tired face. Then she looked at the card again, as if she couldn't believe what she was reading. "I'm sorry," she said, but she didn't sound sorry at all. "This establishment is reserved for beings of proper refinement and culture. Your species lacks the necessary qualities for admission." Jake blinked. He had heard the words, but they didn't make sense at first. "Excuse me?" "Humans are not permitted in this lounge," the Zephyrian said louder. Her crystal skin began to glow brighter. "We have standards to maintain. Perhaps you would be more comfortable in the general cafeteria on level 12. The talking in the EU lounge began to die down. Officers at nearby tables turned to watch. Jake felt his face get hot. Lieutenant Amy Foster, a young diplomat who had been part of his protection detail, was just entering the lounge behind him. She stopped when she heard what was happening. "Ma'am," Jake said, keeping his voice calm, "I have proper military authorization. I've been protecting galactic diplomats for the past 3 days. I just want to get something to eat." The crystal woman smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Your authorization means nothing here. This is a place for civilized beings. Humans are, well, let's just say your people are better suited for more basic establishments." An Altarian bird officer at a nearby table made a sound that Jake knew was laughter among his people. "Typical human," the bird creature said to his companion. "They think their little wars make them equal to real warriors." A Centaurian with 4 arms and pale blue skin nodded. "They're useful for carrying supplies and doing dangerous work, but they don't belong with their betters." Jake felt something cold and heavy settle in his stomach. He had fought beside some of these same species. He had saved Altarian colonies from pirates. He had helped Centaurian trade ships when they were attacked. But now they looked at him like he was dirt on their shoes. Lieutenant Foster stepped forward. Her face was red with anger. "This is outrageous," she said. "Sergeant Martinez is one of the finest soldiers in the galaxy. He has medals from 6 different worlds." The Zephyrian barely looked at her. "Another human. How surprising. Please remove yourselves before I call security." Jake put a hand on Amy's arm. "It's okay, Lieutenant." "No, it's not okay," Amy said. "You can't treat people like this. Jake has done more for galactic peace than half the beings in this room." Some of the alien officers began to whisper among themselves. Jake heard words like primitive and violent and typical human behavior. A tall Titan enforcer with gray skin like stone shook his massive head. "Humans always make noise when they don't get their way. like children. Jake looked around the room. These beings came from worlds with cultures thousands of years old. They had art and music and philosophy that filled libraries. But right now, looking at their faces, Jake saw something ugly. He saw the same look he had seen on bullies back in school. The look of people who hurt others because they could. "Come on, Amy," Jake said quietly. "Let's go." "But Jake," I said, "let's go." Jake turned and walked toward the door. Behind him, he heard the Zephyrian say to someone, "Finally." The smell was getting quite bad. More laughter followed them out. Jake walked faster. Amy had to hurry to keep up with his long steps. They walked in silence until they reached a quiet area near the maintenance levels. Jake found a small alcove with a bench and sat down heavily. Amy sat beside him. "Jake, I'm so sorry. I'm going to file a report about this. That was completely wrong." Jake pulled out a small photo from his wallet. It showed a woman with kind eyes and 2 children, a boy and a girl. "This is my family," he said. "My wife, Sarah, and my kids, Tommy and Lisa. I haven't seen them in 6 months. I know, Jake, you've shown me their picture before. I've been fighting for 3 years to keep the peace in this galaxy. I've been shot at, blown up, and nearly killed more times than I can count. Also that different species can talk instead of fight, and they think I'm not good enough to sit in their fancy lounge." Amy didn't know what to say. She had seen this kind of treatment before, but never so openly cruel. Jake looked at the photo for a long time. Then he put it back in his wallet and stood up. "Come on, let's find that cafeteria on level 12. I'm still hungry." As they walked away, neither of them knew that everything was about to change. The galaxy was about to learn that respect isn't something you give to some beings, and not others. And humans were about to remind everyone why they had earned their place among the stars in the first place. 3 days after Jake Martinez was refused service at the officers' lounge, the story began to spread across the galaxy. Lieutenant Amy Foster had sent a report to her superior officers. She thought it would stay within human military channels. But stories like this never stayed quiet for long. The first person to hear about it was Captain Lisa Rodriguez. She commanded the human frigate called the New Horizons. Lisa was in her ready room when the message came through on her personal communications device. As she read about what happened to Jake, her hands began to shake with anger. Lisa had known Jake for 5 years. They had served together during the Proxima War. Jake had saved her life when pirates attacked their transport ship. He was one of the bravest and most honest soldiers she had ever met. The idea that aliens would treat him like garbage made her sick. Lisa called her friend Commander Nick Reynolds, who was stationed on Titan Base near Saturn. Nick listened to the whole story without saying a word. When Lisa finished, Nick was quiet for a long time. "This isn't the first time," Nick finally said. "Last month, 3 of my engineers were kicked out of a hotel on Vega Prime. The manager said humans were too dirty to stay there. My people had to sleep in their shuttlecraft." "Why didn't you report it?" Lisa asked. "I did. Command said it wasn't worth making trouble over. They said we need to keep good relations with the Vegans because of the trade agreements." Lisa felt her anger growing. "So we're supposed to just take this treatment because it's good for business? That's what they're telling us." After the call ended, Lisa sat in her chair and thought. She had spent 10 years in space, protecting alien colonies, fighting pirates, and keeping the peace. She had lost friends in battles to save beings who now treated humans like servants. On the other side of the galaxy, Danny Wright was having his own problems. Danny was a farmer on the human colony world of New Eden. For 3 years, he had grown crops that fed both humans and aliens across the sector. His corn and wheat were some of the best in known space, but Danny's farm was being attacked by raiders. Small groups of Krillian pirates would come in fast ships, steal what they could, and burn the rest. Danny had called for help from the Galactic Peacekeepers many times. They always said they would send someone, but help never came. Yesterday, the raiders had come again. This time they burned Danny's entire eastern field. Months of work turned to ash in minutes. When Danny called the peacekeepers, the Altarian officer on duty sounded bored. "We will investigate when resources become available," the officer said. "When will that be?" Danny asked. These pirates are destroying everything we've built. Human. Agricultural concerns are not classified as priority situations. You should consider hiring private security. Danny almost laughed. Private security cost more money than most farmers made in a year. The raiders knew this. They knew humans on the rim worlds had no protection. Meanwhile, on the diplomatic side, Ambassador Helen Carter was learning how little her voice mattered in galactic politics. Helen had been Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 2 years. She thought she had been making progress in getting humans treated as equals. She was wrong. When Helen brought up the treatment of human colonists at the weekly council meeting, the other ambassadors barely listened. A Centaurian delegate was reading reports on his datapad. The Zephyrian representative was staring out the window at the stars. Only the Titan ambassador seemed to pay attention, and he was obviously trying not to laugh. The concerns of human settlements are noted, said the council chairman, a tall being with green skin and too many arms. We will consider these matters when time permits. Helen knew what that meant. It meant never. After the meeting, Helen tried to speak privately with some of the other ambassadors. Most of them were polite but had no interest in real conversation. The Altarian ambassador was more direct. Ambassador Carter, he said, your people are newcomers to galactic society. You must understand that respect is earned over time. Perhaps in a few hundred years, when humans have proven themselves more civilized, these issues will resolve naturally. Proven ourselves? Helen asked. Humans have been fighting and dying to protect alien worlds for years. We've saved colonies, stopped wars, and built trade routes that benefit everyone. What more do we need to prove? The bird-like alien made a sound that was like a shrug. Military service is important, but true civilization requires more than the ability to fight. Art, culture, philosophy, these things take time to develop. Humans are still very young as a species. Helen wanted to argue, but she knew it was pointless. These beings had decided that humans were primitive, and nothing she said would change their minds. Back on Earth, news of these events was starting to reach the general population. Social media networks were filled with stories of human soldiers, workers, and diplomats being treated poorly across the galaxy. The stories made people angry, but they also made them sad. Maria Lopez was a human engineer working on a space station in the Andromeda sector. She had helped design the station's life support systems. Without her work, thousands of alien beings would die. But when she tried to eat lunch in the station's main dining area, other patrons complained about sitting near a human. Dr. Ben Turner was a human doctor working in a hospital on Rigel 7. He had saved hundreds of alien lives with his surgical skills. But he wasn't allowed to join the hospital's medical society because humans were considered too unpredictable for serious medical work. These stories, and hundreds like them, began to paint a picture across human space. Humans were good enough to do the dangerous work, the dirty work, the work that others didn't want to do. But they weren't good enough to be treated with respect. Jake Martinez, sitting in his small quarters on Station Omega 7, read these reports on his personal device. Each story made him angrier but also sadder. He thought about his children back on Earth. What kind of galaxy was he helping to build for them? What kind of future would they have if this was how humans were seen? Jake looked at the photo of his family again. Then he made a decision that would change everything. He opened a secure communication channel and began to type a message to every human military unit in the galaxy. The message was simple. We need to talk. The attack on New Eden came without warning. Danny Wright was checking his damaged crops when the first Krillian ships appeared in the sky. These weren't the small raider vessels that had been bothering his farm for months. These were warships, big and black and full of weapons. Danny ran toward his house, but the first blast hit before he could reach the door. The explosion threw him to the ground. Dirt and pieces of his barn rained down around him. When he looked up, he saw more ships, landing all across the valley. This wasn't a raid. This was an invasion. The Krillians were reptile-like beings with thick scales and cold yellow eyes. They walked on 2 legs like humans, but they were bigger and stronger. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth could bite through bone. They were known throughout the galaxy as brutal warriors who took what they wanted and killed anyone who got in their way. Danny crawled behind his damaged barn and pulled out his communication device. His hands were shaking as he tried to call for help. The first person he reached was Pete Johnson, the colony administrator. "Pete, we're under attack," Danny said. "Krillian warships, maybe 50 of them. They're landing troops all over the valley." "I see them," Pete said. His voice was tight with fear. "I'm calling the Galactic Council right now. Help will come." But Danny could hear the doubt in Pete's voice. They both knew how the galaxy felt about human colonies. New Eden was on the rim, far from the important worlds. The Council had always said it was outside the priority defense zones. The Krillian troops began moving through the colony like a wave of destruction. They burned houses and killed anyone who tried to fight back. Danny watched from his hiding place as his neighbors ran for their lives. Some made it to the hills. Many didn't. Susan Davis, who taught school in the colony's main town, was helping children escape when the Krillians found her. She stood between the soldiers and a group of frightened kids holding nothing but a piece of metal pipe. The Krillians laughed at her, but Susan didn't move. She stayed there until every child had gotten away safely. The last thing Danny saw was Susan falling as the Krillians advanced. Tony Garcia, the colony's chief engineer, was trying to destroy the mining equipment so the Krillians couldn't use it. The rare minerals on New Eden were worth millions of credits. That's why the Krillians had come. Tony managed to wreck 2 of the big machines before they caught him. Hours passed. More Krillian ships kept arriving. Danny realized this wasn't just an attack on his colony. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Meanwhile, on Station Omega 7, Jake Martinez was meeting with other human military personnel. Word of the invasion had reached them quickly. Jake sat in a small conference room with 6 other soldiers and officers. Their faces were grim. "The Council's response came an hour ago," said Lieutenant Amy Foster. She held up a data pad with the official message. Quote, "The Kepler system falls outside priority defense zones. Human colonies must provide for their own security. The Council regrets any loss of life." End quote. The room was silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The Galactic Council was abandoning New Eden. They were letting the Krillians take the colony and kill everyone on it. 50,000 people, said Commander Ryan Clark, a Marine who had served with Jake during the Proxima War. Men, women, children, and the Council doesn't care because they're human. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside he could see alien ships coming and going from the station. Business as usual. None of them seemed worried about what was happening to New Eden. "We have to do something," Jake said. "Like what?" asked Amy. "We're just a few soldiers on a diplomatic station. New Eden is 3 days away at maximum speed." "There are human ships in the sector," Ryan said. "Captain Rodriguez's frigate is only 2 days out. Maybe we could mount a rescue mission." "With what authority?" Amy asked. "We can't just abandon our posts and go to war without orders." Jake turned back to face the group. "What if our orders don't come? What if Command tells us to stay here and let New Eden burn?" Nobody answered, but Jake could see the same thought in all their faces. They had all taken an oath to protect humanity, but they had also sworn to follow orders from their superior officers. What happened when those 2 things conflicted? The answer came 6 hours later. Admiral Kevin Hayes, the highest-ranking human in galactic military service, sent a message to all human units. Jake read it on his personal device and his heart sank. All human personnel are ordered to maintain current positions and avoid involvement in the New Eden situation. This is a civilian colonial matter and falls outside military jurisdiction. Any action taken without proper authorization will result in court-martial. Jake stared at the message for a long time. Then he looked around the room at his fellow soldiers. They had all received the same order. "So that's it," Ryan said. "We're supposed to sit here and do nothing while our people die." "Those are our orders," Amy said, but she didn't sound like she believed in them. Jake thought about Susan Davis standing in front of those children with nothing but a piece of pipe. He thought about Danny Wright losing everything he had worked for. He thought about his own children back on Earth and what kind of galaxy he was helping to create for them. "I can't do it," Jake said quietly. "Can't do what?" Amy asked. "I can't sit here and follow orders while humans are being slaughtered. I won't do it." "Jake, think about what you're saying. You could lose everything. Your career, your pension, maybe even your freedom." Jake pulled out the photo of his family. He looked at his wife's face, at his children's smiles. "What good is any of that, if I can't look at them and know I did the right thing?" He stood up and walked toward the door. "I'm going to New Eden. Anyone who wants to come with me is welcome. Anyone who wants to stay and follow orders, I understand." Jake was almost out the door when Ryan stood up. "Wait for me, Sergeant. I'm coming too." Then Amy stood up. "This is crazy, but I'm in." One by one, the others joined them. By the time they left the room, Jake realized something important had just happened. For the first time in years, humans had decided to put their own people first. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. Jake Martinez and his team reached New Eden too late to save the colony, but not too late to save some of the people. When their small transport ship landed in the burning ruins, they found Danny Wright and about 300 other survivors, hiding in the mountains. The Krillians had taken most of the colonists as slaves to work in the mines they were building. "How many?" Jake asked Danny as they crouched behind a destroyed building. "Dead or taken?" Danny's face was covered in dirt and blood. "Maybe 40,000 dead, 10,000 taken prisoner. We're all that's left running free." Jake felt sick. An entire human colony had been destroyed while the galaxy watched and did nothing. The Krillians were still there, setting up permanent bases and forcing captured humans to dig for the rare minerals that made New Eden valuable. "We need to get you people out of here," Jake told Danny. "What about the prisoners? What about Susan and Tony and all the others?" Jake looked through his binoculars at the Krillian base in the valley. It was heavily defended with energy shields and guard towers. His small team couldn't attack something like that and win. "We'll come back for them," Jake promised. "But right now we need to get you to safety." The evacuation took 2 days. Jake's transport ship wasn't big enough for everyone, so Captain Lisa Rodriguez brought her frigate New Horizons to help. Lisa had disobeyed her own orders to come to New Eden. So had Commander Nick Reynolds and his crew from Titan Base. Word was spreading through the human military that something big was happening. As they flew away from New Eden with the survivors, Jake got a message that changed everything. It was from Admiral Kevin Hayes, broadcast to every human military unit in the galaxy. "My fellow humans," the Admiral's voice came through the communication system. "For too long, we have served a galaxy that sees us as expendable. We have bled and died for beings who treat us like servants. We have protected worlds whose people consider us primitive and worthless." Jake listened as the Admiral continued. "The attack on New Eden and the Council's refusal to help our people has shown us the truth. We are alone in this galaxy. We always have been. It's time we started acting like it." The message was simple but shocking. All human military personnel were being ordered to abandon their posts and return to human space. Every human ship, every human soldier, every human worker was to stop what they were doing and come home. "This is not a retreat," Admiral Hayes said. "This is a realization. We don't need them. They need us. And it's time they learned the difference." Within hours, the order was being followed across the galaxy. Dr. Ben Turner walked out of the hospital on Rigel 7, leaving behind alien patients who had only trusted him to perform their surgeries. Engineer Maria Lopez shut down the life support system she had built on 3 different space stations, leaving detailed instructions but taking her expertise with her. Captain Rodriguez's New Horizons joined a growing fleet of human ships heading toward Earth. Commander Reynolds brought his entire squadron. Even human merchant vessels stopped their trade routes and turned toward home. The alien species didn't understand what was happening at first. On Centauri Prime, the blue-skinned council leader called an emergency meeting. "Where are all the humans going?" he asked his advisors. "Our mining operations on Kepler 9 have stopped completely. The human engineers just left." "It seems to be some sort of coordinated withdrawal," replied his military advisor. "All human military units are abandoning their posts. The council leader wasn't worried. Let them go. Humans are easily replaced. We managed perfectly well before they arrived in our sector. But within a week, cracks began to show. Without human pilots, supply runs to dangerous areas stopped completely. Other species were too smart to risk their lives flying through pirate-controlled space for the low pay that humans had accepted. Without human engineers, complicated machinery began breaking down. The aliens had grown used to calling humans when something went wrong. Humans were good at fixing things quickly and cheaply. Now there was no one to call. Without human soldiers, the galaxy's most dangerous missions went unfilled. Other species could fight, but they demanded much higher pay and better conditions. Many simply refused to take the risks that humans had accepted as normal. On Vega Prime, the hotel manager who had refused to let human guests stay began to panic. His hotel's dual power systems were failing, and the human engineer who usually fixed them was gone. The Vegan technicians wanted 3 times the money and couldn't guarantee they could solve the problem. The Zephyrian hostess at the officers' lounge on Station Omega 7 faced her own crisis. Half the station's security force had been human. Now, crime was rising, and there weren't enough guards to keep order. The remaining alien security personnel demanded massive pay raises and shorter shifts. But the real shock came when the Krillian hegemony, emboldened by their easy victory at New Eden, announced their next target. They were going to attack the Sol system itself. Earth and all its colonies were to be conquered and their populations enslaved. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. For the first time in years, they wanted to talk to human representatives, but when they tried to contact Admiral Hayes, his response was short and cold. The Galactic Council made it clear that human concerns are not a priority. We see no reason to discuss galactic matters with beings who consider us beneath their notice. The council leader from Centauri Prime sent a personal message. Admiral Hayes, surely we can discuss this situation reasonably. The Krillian threat affects all of us. Admiral Hayes' reply was broadcast across the galaxy. The Krillian threat affects humans. You made it very clear that human problems are not your problems. We will handle this ourselves. Jake Martinez, now promoted to Colonel Sar for his actions at New Eden, was in the command center on Earth when the Krillian fleet was detected approaching the Sol system. 200 warships, the largest force the Krillians had ever assembled. They were coming to finish what they had started at New Eden. Sir, said Lieutenant Amy Foster, now serving as Jake's intelligence officer. We're detecting massive Krillian fleet movement toward Earth. They'll be here in 6 days. Admiral Hayes looked at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy fleet. Around him, his staff waited for orders. Outside, Earth's defense fleet was assembling. Every human ship that could fight was taking position around their home world. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Hayes said calmly, it looks like we're going to find out what humans can do when we stop fighting for other people and start fighting for ourselves. Jake thought about Susan Davis, standing with nothing but a metal pipe between alien soldiers and human children. He thought about the Zephyrian hostess who had told him he wasn't good enough to sit in an alien lounge. He thought about his wife and children, somewhere on Earth's surface, counting on him to keep them safe. For the first time in years, Jake Martinez smiled. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you pushed humans too far. The Krillian fleet arrived at Earth expecting to find a broken and defenseless world. They had crushed New Eden easily, and humans had run away from the rest of the galaxy like scared animals. The Krillian war commander, a massive reptile named Kreshtar, looked at the small blue planet through his ship's window and felt confident. One world, he said to his officers. A few billion primitives with basic weapons. This will be over in hours. But as the Krillian ships moved closer to Earth, they began to see things that confused them. Human ships were everywhere, more than anyone had expected. The vessels came from every corner of human space, all gathering around their home world, like a protective shield. Captain Lisa Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the New Horizons, now part of Admiral Hayes' main battle fleet. All human ships, this is Admiral Hayes. Today we fight not for trade agreements or diplomatic treaties. Today we fight for our families, our homes, and our right to exist with dignity. Jake Martinez was aboard the heavy cruiser, Terra's Pride, leading a boarding team of Marines including his old friend Ryan Clark. Through the ship's communication system, he could hear Admiral Hayes continue his speech to the fleet. The galaxy has told us we are not good enough to sit at their tables. They have told us we are not worthy of protection. They have told us we are primitive and violent. Today we show them what primitive and violent really means when it's protecting something precious. The battle began when the Krillian fleet tried to break through Earth's outer defenses. The aliens expected human ships to scatter and run, just like they had seen humans do in other conflicts. Instead, the human fleet moved forward to meet them. What happened next shocked the Krillians. Human ships fought with a fury and determination that the reptile warriors had never seen before. Every human pilot knew that behind them were their children, their parents, their loved ones. They couldn't retreat because there was nowhere to go. Commander Nick Reynolds led a squadron of fighters straight into the heart of the Krillian formation. His ship was hit by enemy fire, but he kept flying even as smoke filled his cockpit. "For New Eden!" he shouted over the radio as he crashed his damaged fighter into a Krillian battleship. The Krillians had superior technology and larger ships, but they quickly realized they had made a terrible mistake. Humans didn't fight like other species. Other aliens fought for honor or duty or money. Humans fighting for their families fought like wild animals protecting their young. Jake Martinez's boarding team managed to get aboard the Krillian command ship. The aliens were bigger and stronger, but Jake and his Marines had spent years learning to fight beings who were bigger and stronger than they were. They moved through the ship like ghosts, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could respond. "Ryan, take your team to the engine room," Jake ordered over his radio. "Amy, you're with me. We're going for the bridge." The fighting inside the Krillian ship was brutal. Jake watched Ryan Clark take down a Krillian soldier twice his size using nothing but speed and intelligence. Lieutenant Amy Foster, who had started this whole thing by witnessing Jake's humiliation at the officers' lounge, now moved through alien corridors with deadly precision. On the bridge of the Krillian command ship, War Commander Kreshitar was beginning to panic. His fleet was being torn apart by humans who fought like demons. Half his ships were already destroyed or disabled. This wasn't how the battle was supposed to go. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a message from the human admiral." "Put it through," Kreshitar growled. Admiral Hayes' voice filled the bridge. "Krillian Commander, your fleet is beaten. Surrender now and I'll spare the lives of your crews." Kreshitar laughed, showing his sharp teeth. "Primitive humans think they can defeat the mighty Krillian Empire? We will crush you and take your world." "Your choice," Admiral Hayes said calmly. That's when Jake Martinez and his team burst onto the bridge. The fight was short and violent. When it was over, Kreshitar was on his knees with Jake's weapon pointed at his head. "The primitive human has a message for you," Jake said. "Surrender your fleet or watch it burn." Looking at the tactical display, Kreshitar could see that his mighty invasion force was destroyed. In 6 hours of fighting, humans had done what no other species had ever managed. They had defeated the Krillian war machine. The victory sent shockwaves across the galaxy. On every alien world, beings who had dismissed humans as servants and primitives watched the news reports in amazement. The same species they had refused to serve in restaurants had just destroyed the most feared military force in known space. On Centauri Prime, the blue-skinned council leader called emergency meetings with his advisors. "How is this possible? Humans were supposed to be weak and disorganized." "Sir," his military advisor said nervously, "it appears we may have underestimated their capabilities." Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. The Altarian bird warriors who had laughed at human soldiers now studied recordings of the battle with respect and fear. The Zephyrian crystal beings who had considered humans too primitive for their lounges now realized they had insulted some of the galaxy's most dangerous fighters. But Admiral Hayes wasn't finished. His next broadcast was heard on every inhabited world in the galaxy. "People of the galaxy," he began, "humanity has proven it can stand alone. We have defended our world without your help and defeated enemies you considered unstoppable. The question, Now is whether you can stand without us. Hayes continued. We offer a new agreement. Those who wish to deal with humanity as equals, with respect and dignity, will find us generous partners. Those who prefer the old ways of treating humans as servants will find themselves dealing with their problems alone. 3 months later, a small group of alien diplomats arrived at Earth. Among them was the Zephyrian hostess from Station Omega 7. She had been chosen to represent her people in asking for human forgiveness and partnership. Jake Martinez, now wearing the uniform of a full colonel, met the diplomatic party at Earth's main spaceport. The Zephyrian female looked very different from the proud being who had refused him service months ago. Now she seemed nervous and humble. Colonel Martinez, she said, her crystal skin barely glowing, I have come to apologize for my treatment of you, and to ask if humanity might consider renewing relationships with the Zephyrian Republic. Jake looked at her for a moment. He could have been cruel, could have refused her the way she had refused him. Instead, he smiled and gestured toward the entrance to the spaceport. Please come in, he said. Let's find somewhere comfortable to talk. I know a nice lounge where all species are welcome. As they walked together, Jake pulled out his phone and looked at a new photo. It showed him with his wife Sarah and their children at a family dinner the week before. In the background, through the window of their Earth home, alien ships could be seen in the sky, but now they came as friends, not masters. The galaxy had learned that respect wasn't something you earned by being perfect or civilized. It was something you commanded by showing that you wouldn't accept anything less. And humanity had finally found its voice among the stars.